Hey, this is Troy Taylor with the Championship Football Coaches Clinic podcast, sponsored by Reps, Virtual Reality, First Down Playbook, Rack Coach, Tip of the Spear, the Top Hopper, and Sports Workbook. Today, we have Jesse Sapolu, one of the best offensive linemen when I was growing up for the 49ers. I was a Redskin fan. I used to watch them play the Giants. And Coach Alex Maribal. This all came about because I wanted to do a show for Coach McKittrick, and I talked to Randy Cross, and we're gonna do one on Coach McKittrick. But Alex said you need to get Jesse on here by himself, so we're doing it right now. Coach, thank you for coming on. For the people that don't know, Coach, tell us a little bit about yourself and where you're from.
Well, Coach, I was born in Samoa, independent Samoa. Samoa is divided into two. One is a territory and one's independent. We're all related. It's just the territory is under the United States. So I was born on the independent side. Then I came here when I was 10 years old. Didn't speak a word of English, but sports was kind of the thing that kind of allowed me to be befriended by kids. I was kind of big for my size. Started playing flag football, and I played as a running back in flag football. But as you know, as you get older, you get bigger. They start pushing you forward, to the line. But and then my parents were ministers, and we moved to Hawaii. We were in LA for about a year and a half when we first moved from Samoa. Then we moved to Hawaii, and I grew up there for 14 years, all the way from junior high, high school. Then decided to go to the University of Hawaii. I didn't leave the islands until I got drafted by the San Francisco 49ers in 1983. And obviously, I played 15 years with some of the great linemen that I played with, like Randy Cross and Steve Wallace, Guy McIntyre, Harris Barton, and those guys. So that was a great run that we had. And sometimes, I'm sitting there getting ready to get introduced in the Super Bowl, and I just think back of how fast life can change, because in Samoa I didn't have a ball to play with. We used a piece of stick to play rugby, and then the next thing you know, I'm sitting in that locker room getting ready to play in the biggest game that football offers. And we truly believe we're people of faith. Polynesians are people of faith, and truly believe it was a blessing from God, and also the work that my parents put in to spread the gospel. I believe that I was able to, reap the benefits of that work. So, and that's the way I feel. That's the way I try to live my life. And as you know, some of the things that I'm doing now that I'm retired, I'm very thankful for the life that football offered me, and thank you for having me on.
Yeah, thank you, Coach, for coming on. Who are some of the coaches? We're going to talk about Bob McKittrick. We'll talk about him probably after this. But who are some of the coaches in your early life, Coach, that kind of saw something in you or believed in you?
Well, my high school coach was a guy named El Espenda. He's Hawaiian. But, Coach, when I was in junior high, I was big for my size, for my age. And so obviously, even back then, there were some private schools that came to my junior high and offered me like a financial aid scholarship, so to speak, back in those days. And, so I went to Damien High School, which is a Catholic school, played there as a freshman. It was the only championship that they've ever had at any level in football, that freshman year that I had. Then they found out I had a heart murmur, and if you read my story, I'm the first and only player, as far as I know so far, to have open heart surgery and came back and played in the NFL. So, but that story goes way back, but it started when I was at Damien High School. And then they found out after my freshman year that I had a heart murmur and just took away my financial aid. Wow. Yes. So then I know it's weird, but I if you Google my story, you're going to read a lot about what I went through. And then from the private high school, I went to a high school that's out of my district. And I played football there for 1 year, my sophomore year. Didn't really get along with those kids because I grew up in a different area, and had 6 Fs my first semester of my sophomore year.
Wow.
So when I speak to kids and when I speak to different schools and different places that I speak at, I tell them the only reason I had 6 Fs because I only had 6 classes. But a lot of that was just low self-esteem. I went through a little bit of, now that I'm older, looking back on it, probably went through insecurities, depression a little bit. And, but then when I transferred back to the public high school or the area that I grew up in, it was that coach, Spenda, that kind of sat me down and talked about, hey man, you're 6'2", you're 245 pounds, as a sophomore. In those days,
That's a big kid.
that was really big, and he says, if you would just listen to what I'm saying and put in some work and sacrifice, you can change your life.
Wow.
And it was one of those things, even when I spoke at some of the NFL symposiums that we had, even at the Pro Bowl, when I went back to playing the Pro Bowl, I talked about I'll be sitting in my math class, and all of a sudden the math teacher would stop the class and say, hey, hi, coach. He would walk there to poke his head in to make sure I'm in class. So those are the kind of efforts of some of those men that changed my life. So he played a really, really big role in turning this thing around, because who would have known if I'd never really got out of that funk that I was in of having 6 Fs and with low self-esteem. Then I got recruited, and that really kind of just made me take off when colleges started coming there. And my high school coach would say, well, you go talk to this coach. He's here to get you and possibly offer you a college scholarship. I'm like, wow, how things change from 6 Fs, not feeling good about myself, to doing that. And then of course, I grew up in a Polynesian household where my mom, if I slept at someone else's house, she get nervous, they worry about you. Mm-hmm. So me coming to Arizona State, going to Michigan State, it was really hard at that particular time because there was no social media where they can see me like this and see how I'm doing. A kid going from Hawaii even to California was a major step. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to go to Arizona State. At that time, they had a legendary coach named Frank Kush. And Arizona State just beat Nebraska to become the number 2 team in the nation at that particular time. So I'm thinking, hey man, if I go here, I'm going to play on national TV, and and being a young kid, unrealistic, thinking NFL, maybe I can play in the NFL one day. But my mom just hung in there and said, son, I don't want you to go away. And then I had a real influential coach named Dick Tomey.
I've heard of him.
Who coached me in Hawaii, that came and promised me, Jess, if you stayed here and played in front of all the people that watch you as a young kid, and do all the right things, I promise you're going to play on national TV. So I decided at the last second to stay home. And so Dick Tomey played a big role in how to shape me as a young man and as a college football player. And I played 2 ways at Hawaii, both on offense and defense. Wow. And then obviously in 1983, there weren't a lot of draft choices that came out of Hawaii. There were a few, but I was fortunate enough to be drafted by the San Francisco 49ers in the 11th round, which we joke about it now. I would have been a undrafted free agent now, because they only have 7 rounds. But then I came to the Niners, and of course, and there's something that when I talked to Bob McKittrick, that he said it's the reason why they drafted me. He says, Jess, when we watched the Hawaii film, whether you were up by 30 or you're down by 30, we couldn't tell the difference in your effort level. Mm-hmm. So, and that's something that I keep in my mind, that I motivate some of the kids that, because now kids are, they're rated, right? And some of the kids that come to my camps, you can tell with their walk that they're starting to get full of themselves when they get ranked as a 4-star or a 5-star. And I tell them that story, why I got drafted. It's your ability to play the game as hard as you can, whether you're up by 30 or you're down by 30. It's a consistency that coaches are looking for. And so that's my story. And obviously played 15 years with some of the greats like Randy Cross and those guys, and won 4 Super Bowls and 2 Pro Bowls and 2 All Pros. So can't complain.
Yes, sir. So just looking at your, who you played for. I mean, this was before free agency. I mean, you played for the 49ers. So teams were built through the draft, and they
Yes.
had to do their homework. And I believe was McVay the GM and Bill Walsh and McKittrick.
Yes.
I mean, who was it that really did their homework? I mean, because they drafted some guys who would go on to be Hall of Famers, but they weren't first-round picks. So, I mean, what was that process for Bill Walsh and McVay and Coach McKittrick? What was it like?
Well, according to Bob, he looked on the board and he got to the last pick, and he told the guys, "That's the best player that's on the board."
Wow.
Jesse Sapolu was the best player that's left on the board, and and coach, the draft back then was one day, right? So the first round at Radio City in New York was 4 a.m. Hawaii time, Honolulu time. I didn't get drafted till 7 p.m., and I didn't get a call from the 49ers. I got a call from the Philadelphia Eagles, that said, "Hey, Jess, we're about to draft you. The 49ers just took you, the pick right before us." So the 49ers didn't call me till the next day.
So why did the Eagles call you? Just in case you got cut or something?
Well, probably, and at that time, when you get to those rounds, there were other teams that called me. They were willing to sign me as a free agent, but the draft was still going on. And I'm like, nah, I'm just going to wait it out and see what happens. And but probably the 49ers are thinking, hey, it's 10 o'clock California time. It's 7 p.m. in Hawaii, and we'll call him tomorrow to let him know we're drafting.
Yeah, he might be asleep. I mean, I guess they owned you by then, it's kind of,
right.
When the reason to call, we got him.
But those are some of the things, Coach, that never left my heart every day that I go out to practice, every day that I come into the locker room. I remember after the draft, we came to minicamp, and of course they had a write up on every individual, that was drafted. And of course, Roger Craig was our first pick, and could be a superstar, has the potential to be a superstar. We got down to me, which I was the last pick because we didn't have a 12th rounder. I said, this is a chance for a kid from Hawaii to get a free trip to California.
Wow.
So, it's funny because I think, I saw that writer in that locker room every year for 15 years, and I never once let him forget it. And I did it because I needed to remind myself of where I started, where I came from, just to keep that edge and try to play as long as I could.
Yes, sir. So I want to talk to you about Bob McKittrick. Before that, I remember it was probably 20 years ago now. 60 Minutes did a story on Samoa and Polynesian culture, and that pretty much if your ethnic background is Samoan, you have pretty much the best chance of making it to the NFL per capita, because it's that warrior mentality, it's that character, it's that toughness. Do you remember 60 Minutes doing that story? And
Yes.
And can you talk a little bit about the culture, Coach, that impacts, football?
Well, our culture kind of matches this particular sport because it has that warrior, like you mentioned, the gladiator mentality. I think that's great. I think that comes natural to us because of the way our homeland was defended back in the day. If you look at the history of Samoa and all the other Pacific islands, but I think the number one reason is it's very, very normal to see a 15-year-old Samoan or Tongan or Polynesian that's 6'2", 275 pounds without even entering a weight room yet.
Yes.
It's just part of our gene pool. I think when you find a lot of those kids and then you train them right, and the kid has the right mentality, the chances of you going to college, and then of course, you get to the next level, it's way up. And I tell these stories to even my sons when they were coming up, and some of the kids that I coach. I said, I was trying to watch what I eat when we had some other linemen, drink. I see them with their Tupperware, um, uh, saving their food, and they're drinking shakes in between the meals, just to keep up their weight. And I'm thinking, man, I wish I had that problem. But I think it's very common for our community to have those kind of kids. Now, the new thing now, Coach, is, back then was, we wanted to be like the Jesse Sapolus, the big linemen, right? And every now and then we have linebackers like Junior Seau, once in a while we would have like a Troy Polamalu. You look at that now, we got quite a few defensive backs now. We have one that's an all-pro with the 49ers in Talanoa Hufanga.
Nice.
But we have a lot of linebackers that are all over the league. Not all of them are starters, but once you make it to that level, you're an elite player. But now, Coach, we have quarterbacks. We just had our first Heisman Trophy winner about 5 years ago in Marcus Mariota. We got Tua Tagovailoa, but we got some other ones. DJ Uiagalelei, who was at Clemson, that transferred to Oregon State. But we got some more that's coming from the high school level that are 6'5". I'm like, how the heck, Coach? When I came out at 6'3", that was really, really tall for a Polynesian. Most Polynesians are 6'1", 6 feet, 280, right? The weight wasn't the problem; it's just the height. Mm-hmm. But I think it's the way their nutrition, and of course mixed marriages. Have now we got kids that are 6'6", 6'7".
Oh yeah.
The starting left tackle for the Philadelphia Eagles, Jordan Mailata, didn't even play football until he was 22 years old. He came from Australia playing rugby. Now he signed a 5-year, $68 million contract. I mean, Coach, this is a kid 6 years ago didn't even know what a 3-point stance was. But he was 6'8". He weighed 320 pounds. He ran with the rugby ball, so he had some skills. And he came to IMG because he saw the dream. He was too big to play rugby, and trained there and took a chance, and he got drafted in the 6th round by the Eagles. So, and now he's legitimately their starting left tackle. So it's very common, like I said, for a Polynesian kid to be 280, in high school at 260, 270, before they even learn how to do a power clean or a squat or a bench press. Mm-hmm. So I think that to me, when I look back on it, there's a certain advantage there, because there's kids that, even if they're tall in high school, they're not big, they're not heavy enough or to play the position. So that's a blessing and something that we're very thankful about.
So my friend Coach Bald here, he used to coach in St. Petersburg, Florida at Lakewood High School. Isaiah Wynn, who played for the Patriots, played for him. He just signed with the Dolphins. And Tua is the quarterback of the Dolphins. And I know he's from Hawaii. And he said pro wrestlers as well, Polynesian. Haku, I think he might be one of the baddest men of all time. I mean, they said he would be UFC champ if the UFC would have been around then. Talk a little bit about that, not just the football coach, but the pro wrestlers that have came out that were Polynesian. I mean,
and I know that family that started the pro wrestling pipeline because they're from San Francisco, and their parents were ministers and they were good friends with my parents. We're not that big of a community, and that family, the last name of that family is the Anoa'i that started the tag team is the Wild
SWAT team.
Yeah, well, the older ones were the Wild Samoans.
The Wild
and they became tag team champions. But that particular family, Coach, was a family that Rikishi is from.
Yes.
Roman Reigns is from that family.
Yes.
Yokozuna is from that family. So, and then obviously, with Peter Mike
Johnson, is his mom in that family?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. So, Well, what happened is my dad was a big wrestling fan, and of course, when I grew up as a youngster, I used to tag along and went with him. So, but he was good friends with Peter Maivia, High Chief Peter Maivia, who's Dwayne Johnson's grandfather.
Yes. Yeah, Rocky Maivia.
So,
That's where he got the
right.
name. Took it. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, we're good in those sports, and there's something that I'm interested in doing, which have already happened, and that we're trying to use our platform as football players, as wrestlers, to spread out to benefit our young ladies, you
Amen.
know, who are working hard, get their degrees. Because I've heard stories in San Francisco of, I've been told that a young lady would go and interview for a job, and the CEO happened to be a 49er fan, and they ask them, "Hey, where are you from?" And they tell them, "We're from the islands, from Hawaii or Samoa." So, well, Jesse Sapolu, and people make fun of me, Joe Montana and even Randy would make fun of me. Hey, man, are you guys all related? I mean, I was at a gas station putting in gas, and some guy would say, "Hey, Randy, tell my cousin Jesse I said hello."
I mean, I said Fanoga, Fasabalu, Army Matupaku. I can't even say his name. It's so long, Coach. But yeah, I mean, it's a warrior mentality. It's a family. It's a brotherhood. And I was so lucky. Mark James, who was the head coach at Virginia Union, he's from Fort Lauderdale. Mike Fanoga would bring him out there to the all poly camp.
Yes.
So when was the all poly camp started, Coach? And how important has that been, to us seeing all these Polynesian players making it in pro football?
Yes, and I've done the Polynesian the poly camp with the all poly camp with Coach Fanoga. I think they started almost 20 years ago.
Wow.
Which was a great thing that was done by Alain Mateo and his group in Utah, just to according to Alemo, just to make sure that our kids don't get in trouble,
Amen.
and start training them and teaching them life lessons on how to handle yourself. And then it's just started growing to the point where, depending on NCAA rules and where they had the camp, there were, like, I would say 40 to 50 college coaches there, and a lot of them are of Polynesian ancestry. And it was really a great program that he does, and they still do a nice job with that. But yeah, it started way back about 20 years ago. But I've been going to Samoa to do camps ever since 1982. I was a junior in college, with different coaches. And then as soon as I retired, June Jones asked me to go with him. He did a goodwill mission that also did football camps, in which we donate hospital equipment like x-ray machines. We would take with us to Samoa for the hospital. And then we did a football camp on top of that. So, when I first went to Samoa, they only had one or two D2 guys that came out of there. They had 7 NFL players that come from there, Coach. And it's a population now of about 50,000 because a lot of the people have moved to the States. And I'm talking about 7 that went to high school there. Because back in the day, and, for a Samoan kid to make it, they would have to come here as a 14, 15-year-old, go to high school here, be exposed, and then hopefully get a college scholarship. But I'm talking about the 5 high schools they have there. There were 7 guys that actually went to school there, graduated from there, came here. Some of them went to junior colleges, like Jonathan Fanene, Tomara Peko, who played 12 years with the Cincinnati Bengals and the Denver Broncos. And then Isaac Sopoanga, who played 9 years with the 49ers. But those guys came straight from there. So we've come a long ways, from how it used to be. And then when you look at some of the equipment that these kids play with, I mean, Coach, they're sharing helmets, the offensive lineman come off and give his helmet to the defensive tackle. There's no fitting. See how safe it is. But that is the generation that, of the 80s and 90s. And I'm thankful that, safety is a priority now with, NFL, and it has come, high schools and colleges are looking at the same thing. So, yeah, we made some progressions.
Yes, sir. Bob McKittrick. The reason I wanted to do the show about Coach McKittrick, and we're going to talk a lot more about him, is people always talk about the GOATs. And Coach McNally told me, Troy, a guy no one talks about is Bob McKittrick. And when I was younger, I remember I had the video of him using the Crowther, and I thought he was old. But now when I look at him, he looks like Joe Rogan. He really was not that old.
No.
He was diesel. He was jacked.
Yeah.
So talk a little bit about playing for Bob McKittrick, one of the greatest of all time, 4 Super Bowls.
Well, Bob McKittrick's got 5 Super Bowls.
Wow.
He coached all 5 of those teams. There's 6 guys on the 49er history as players that got 4. The five of the guys got Super Bowl 1 to, our first Super Bowl to our 4th Super Bowl. I'm the only guy that won the 2nd Super Bowl and played with Steve Young, in our last Super Bowl. So, but Bob McKittrick is, and sometimes I get a little disappointed because they need to start looking at men who are behind what these dynasties are made of, people that are really behind. If you look at John Gruden, and if you look at his book, Bob McKittrick is the most influential coach ever, and in his life. And I remember it well, Coach, because I'm the one that sits in the offensive line meeting room when John Gruden was like a what do they call it?
Gopher.
Like an intern. There's a word for it now, but so
talk about that, Coach. Talk about that. Seeing John Gruden there, and
John Gruden would, back then we didn't have the internet, right? So it's all videotapes, right? And John Gruden, would come in at 5 a.m. He's a hard worker, and Bob would cut up films for Bob. When I first started, we had those projectors, but then we went to videotape. We thought that was high tech. But John Gruden would come to our meeting room as we're doing installation and sit on the floor, on the door, right outside, and I'm the one that, sits next to the door with the light switch. So I would turn on the light and I say, "Hey, Bob," I said, "Coach Gruden's sitting right here on the floor." Bob said, "John, come on in," right? So for that whole year, John Gruden was learning the installation of the West Coast, the guts of the offense. Not, the flashy stuff is great, but the guts of the offense, how it's been run from the front all the way to the receivers. And that's why John has always respected Bob McKittrick. Then we had, Mike Holmgren has said things about Bob is the best he's, one of the best he's ever worked with. And Mike Shanahan, when he left us to go to Denver, won back-to-back Super Bowls. And he says, Bob McKittrick forgot more football than I know. These are some of the coaches that are going to be in the Hall of Fame. And but Bob was a former Marine. That was his background. The thing that I appreciated about Bob is he never really yelled and cussed you out, but he was tough as nails as far as telling you the truth. Telling you the truth. I remember sitting in the training room. I just had my ankle injected like twice because I needed to play on Sunday. And I'm sitting there, I have it elevated. I got ice all over it to make sure, the goal was for me to play on Sunday. And it was an important playoff game. And I'm thinking, Bob is going to come in this training room and just thank me for making this effort, sacrificing for the team. He comes in and it's my left ankle that's elevated with the bags of ice. And he says, "I heard you got a few shots there." I said, "Yeah." He says, "By tomorrow, you won't tell the difference between that ankle and a good one." He sent a message. He sent me a message. Jess, it's part of what you do. We need you this weekend. That's just part of what's expected of you. And it developed that mentality of, there were times, when you play for 15 years, there were many times when, it's Tuesday and you're thinking, man, I don't know if I'm going to play. You're Wednesday, but you're going to the training room 3 times a day, right? But when Bob coaches you, you get to Tuesday, and even though you feel like you're still hurting, Wednesday, it's already in your mind. I'm going to play. I'm going to play on Sunday. It's what's expected of me. But it changes your mentality. Now, when I retired coaching, I had to come back home and started coaching my sons. I had to readjust myself from that mindset, and not be, because when my kids have a bad sprained ankle, I'm like, I'm kind of the wrong dad to complain to, kind of thing. And it was that mentality that Bob McKittrick instilled in us, and that's the reason why, Coach, we have so many epic comebacks when we go on the road or we're down by 17 with 6 minutes to go. Think about that. There was a few games we're down by 17 with less than double-digit minutes left in the game, and we come back and win the game. It's that never, ever, ever give up mentality. And Bob has that sign of never, ever, ever giving up in our meeting room. And I always appreciate him, the honesty that he has. Bob will tell you if you're not good enough to play in the league. and there are coaches that yell at you and demean you, but doesn't give you the right direction as far as what's expected of you. Bob was just a total opposite of that, and I always appreciate him for that.
Yeah, and I mean, I even heard when he got cancer, he would not even miss practice.
No, and that's that mentality that I'm talking about.
He lives it. He don't just preach it. He lives it.
He lives it. And I owe a lot to that man. I think he deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. The Hall of Fame needs to understand the people that sacrifice to make these special teams, create the special dynasties. I mean, right now it's whoever the media talks about and pumps up. It's, but they need to look deep into why are these teams some of the best teams ever in the history of the game. Bob McKittrick belongs to be in that conversation. John McVay belongs to be in that conversation. So that's the thing that we're doing with the Niners right now, is trying to push some more of our guys to try to be in the Hall of Fame. Because, I mean, Coach, you have to understand what I'm looking at. What I'm looking at, the window that I'm looking through. We're 5-0 in Super Bowls. Now that I look back on it, how tough that was. But to me, at that particular time, it's Super Bowl or bust. It was just a mentality that we had, not knowing how difficult it was to do. And yet we have the Buffalo Bills, who are 0-4, and they have as many guys in the Pro Football Hall of Fame as we do. So it's some things that we're trying to work on, but yeah, it is what it is, man.
Yeah, no. Hey, you still got it. Y'all still got the rings. I mean, there's some guys that would probably trade it, man, to at least one Super Bowl. So since we're on the Super Bowl, talk about that. Getting ready for that game. I mean, is it just like any other game? What does Coach Walsh do, or what does Coach McKittrick do to prepare their team for that game?
Well, I think it's a mixture of, we have a certain standard that we set as a team. And I mentioned it in some words, it's Super Bowl or bust. I know a lot of teams say that, but you have to truly believe in it. And we truly believed in it. I mean, if we don't win the Super Bowl, man, it's like there's a death that's going on in the 49er organization. There's a lot of pressure in doing that. There's Coach, there are times when I'm sitting back and I'm thinking, man, there's guys who make the same amount as I make or more that always finish their season in December, man, with no pressure, But I'm very thankful of that particular time, because it kind of spills over to your life and how you carry yourself and how you raise your kids and your expectations of what's around you. It's a high standard. And that's something that Bill Walsh, Bob McKittrick, John McVay, those great men, we had Mike Holmgren, who was one of my coordinators. Dennis Green was a coordinator for me. So they all come from that high standard of expectation and settle for nothing less. So it's something that I'm really thankful for. Like I said, now I mentor a few of our players, including Talanoa Hufanga. And I tell Talanoa, I said, hey, man, we need number 6.
Mm.
And we've been close a few times.
Yeah, y'all gotten there a couple times. I
Yeah.
mean, heck.
Yeah. Leading in the fourth quarter.
I mean, heck, I'm glad that the NFL allows a team to have a third quarterback. I mean, that wasn't even no fun to watch the 49ers have to play a game without a quarterback. I mean, it's ridiculous.
It's one of those deals, especially this past year. The fact that we got to our third quarterback, and this kid came out, and Kyle did a beautiful job of bringing him along to the point where the 49er faithful stopped. Hey, we got a shot at this thing with Brock Purdy, who was Mr. Irrelevant. But the most disappointing thing is we didn't even get a chance to compete, because he got hurt early in the game with nobody else. No, there were a few snaps we put in Christian McCaffrey, and then we brought in our fourth string quarterback, who was the backup, and you could tell, early in the game,
didn't
he kept pointing to his helmet like he couldn't hear. I was telling some people, I'm like, no, he didn't know the formations.
It's a big scene, man. It's a big stage. Not to have a quarterback. So I'm glad they changed that rule. But when Randy Cross was on last time, I wish I would have asked him more about this, because I mean, Randy is probably one of the best people that I've had on this show. I mean, he was so genuine, and he spoke from his heart, and he got so emotional talking about Coach McKittrick, talking about his college coach, Dick Vermeil, and Bill Walsh. I mean, he almost came to tears. He's just one of the best people. But I wish I would have asked him more about his teammates. Like, talk a little bit about your teammates. Like, I mean, you played with the GOATs, Jerry Rice, Joe Montana, Roger Craig.
You throw out a name. You throw out a name, and I'll
out of the Joe Montana, undefeated in Super Bowls. I mean, that's kind of like Michael Jordan. I mean, undefeated in finals. Like, what's so great about Joe Montana? What did they see in him?
Nothing physically that jumps out. My first minicamp when I came out, they won the Super Bowl in '81, and then they missed the playoffs in '82, a short strike shortened season. So '83 was my rookie year. But I was a junior in college when I watched Joe win the Super Bowl. So when you come out, wow, that's Joe Montana. Then I saw him throw some passes to Roger Craig, and I'm like, man, my college quarterbacks got a nicer spiral than that, But the thing with Joe is his accuracy, his touches on his passes. Everybody talks about run after the catch, the rack. The rack kind of was created by the 49ers West Coast,
Yes.
If Joe doesn't put it right where it's supposed to be, where Jerry Rice or John Taylor or Freddie Solomon or Dwight Clark can catch it in stride, and there's no such thing as run after the catch. There's too many talented linebackers and DBs that will shut you down if you got to reach back for the ball. Because as soon as you as soon as you lose that momentum, they'll catch you. NFL's got too many talented guys. But Joe puts it right on the spot, and that's what separated him from everybody else. He needed to, and he threw it to a spot before they make the break very, very accurately. But obviously also it's his mentality. Joe's one of those guys that he's most comfortable when he hangs out with offensive linemen, at a bar and just sitting there, compared to being given MVP awards and everybody asking for his autograph. And obviously one of the best Super Bowls is when we had to drive the ball, I think 94 yards against Cincinnati to win it. At the end, and you heard the story about John Candy.
Yeah, tell us that. What was that like being in that huddle?
Well, it was a TV timeout, and we ran out there, and the umpire told Randy, "Hey, man, it's a TV timeout. TV, hold on, TV timeout." So we went through a commercial, and Joe bent down and he saw John Candy through the huddle, and pointed him out. And I'm thinking, wow, we got 2 minutes to try to win the whole thing. And this guy is pointing out John Candy. And I'm thinking, if the driver of the bus is confident, I feel pretty good about our chances. And obviously everybody know what happened. We drove the ball and he threw a touchdown to John Taylor to win it all with 36 seconds left.
Have you seen the new movie Air about Michael Jordan and the shoes? That's a great movie.
Oh no, I haven't seen it. I just saw The Last Dance, but I haven't seen that yet.
You got to watch this because it talks about Sonny Vaccaro, who was basically the scout that for Nike. He was a college guy, but he picked Jordan, and the reason is before he shot the shot his freshman year at UNC, he was so cool. Like he was not even worried about it. And Dean Smith picked him to shoot the ball, not James Worthy. So
Right.
it was something about being calm in the moment, when you have everything to lose, but you're not worried about that because you're just going to do what you got to do. So that's a cool movie, Coach. You got to see that, man. I loved it.
I gotta check that out.
Jerry Rice. I mean,
Well, Jerry Rice, if you look back at Jerry Rice's rookie year, of course he wasn't a high first rounder. He was kind of like I don't know if he was a 18th or maybe 22nd pick in the first round. But still expectations were high. But Jerry started dropping balls early in his rookie year, and he worked so hard. You could tell he worked so hard in practice, but he was just trying too hard, and people of course wrote that, this rookie might not work out. But the thing that I know about Jerry from playing with him for about 12 years is that Jerry's engine is not like no other. He works so hard, and when he steps on the field, he plays the game like somebody did something to him, and he's going to make them pay for the rest of their lives. That's the mentality that he had. We had two great wide receivers. Jerry had an engine like no other. He would carry us into the fourth quarter. But we also had another all-pro receiver named John Taylor.
Oh yeah.
When he's on, I mean, it's a beautiful thing to see. But Jerry Rice, like I said, he played like somebody owed him something, and that's something that taught us. We worked hard, but but when you see someone that catches the ball 5 yards every play and sprints another 50 to 60 to make sure he gets in the end zone and run back and get back in the huddle, it sets the standard of the standard that I've spoken about. That's how we built it to become the norm of what we do.
Yeah, Coach. So, I mean, man, we could sit here and talk forever, Coach, about the 49ers, but I can't wait to get talk a little bit about the guys that you want to get together to talk about Coach McKittrick for the guys that are watching now and what they have to look forward to. Who are you planning on getting together? Randy Cross already said he'll do it. Who else are you thinking about?
Well, I'm thinking of Steve Wallace, who I'd done some work with when we went to Mexico when the Niners played there, so I can reach out to him. Guy McIntyre still works with the organization at the office. So, but I'm going to try to see if I can get Harris Barton and try to get his contact. We are guys that weren't the biggest, but Bob McKittrick knew exactly what he wanted. Randy Cross could tell you there are times we would watch films of other teams, before, other offensive line playing against the defense that we're about to play again. And Bob, to his honest opinion, they were all pro guys, and he goes, he can never play for me. He's not athletic enough. So Bob McKittrick had in his mind exactly how he planned to build his offensive lines.
You're exactly right, because last night I talked to Mike Pope, who's the tight end coach for Bill Parcells, and he said when the people who evaluate talent can pick the players that the coaches want and fit into their system, that's when you have a recipe for something special. But now they fire coaches every other year. I mean, they really don't know what they're picking for. But back then, Bob McKittrick knew exactly what he wanted, and
Yeah.
that's what he got when he got those linemen. So you're exactly right.
I mean, there's a story about Bob McKittrick. I guess they have the medical group, training room group. Before the draft happens, they go up and meet with the coaches, and they read out names, and then they have a medical report on this player and this player, right? And they said, Guy McIntyre, well, he has flat feet, you know. Jesse Sapolu, he's been known to have a broken foot here. And then after a while, Bob McKittrick stopped the trainer and says, so you want us to draft a bunch of healthy guys that can't play worth a lick?
Yeah, I mean, if you're a warrior, man, you're going to get banged up, man, especially when you played, Coach.
Exactly.
I mean, it was a different game.
That's Bob McKittrick for you, though. I mean, he speaks his mind, and that's why Bill Walsh loved him, because he spoke his mind in the coaches' meetings. From the things that I heard, if something wasn't quite right, Bob McKittrick would be the guy that over Mike Holmgren and all these other coaches that were new to the system.
Yeah.
I mean, think about that run. And because when Mike Shanahan became my coordinator, he struggled a little bit. Remember, he got fired from the Raiders, but came to the Niners, watched all the installations of Bill Walsh's offense, West Coast offense, learned everything about that, and then added his own twist. So when I played with the Niners, my sons played in the locker room, run around with a kid named Sean McVay. Because his dad, Tim McVay, was the son of John McVay. So Tim would bring him, tag along to our locker room. The ball boy, when I was playing, is now the head coach for the San Francisco 49ers, Kyle Shanahan. So, and of course, John Gruden and some of the young coaches that went on. Gary Kubiak was a young coach for us. So a lot came from that particular time, and it's something that I'm very proud of.
Yeah, it was special. It was a special time, and there was, like you said, I mean, so much grew from all that greatness and all that hard work and dedication and doing it the right way. So after you got done playing, Coach, you got into coaching and you started your own academy. You started your own the Polynesian Hall of Fame. Can you talk a little bit about what you did after your playing days and what you're doing now, Coach?
Well, when I first retired, Coach, I mean, it's an adjustment, because football is something I did since I was 10 years old, right? And then by the time I retired, I was 37. I was almost 38. So it's all the only thing that I knew, and so when I came back and I had, sons that were about to become teenagers that were about to play, I'm thinking, wow, I have to reacclimate myself to become a dad. One thing that I knew I was good at was playing football. Now reality struck. Hey, now you got to become a dad. And I started, obviously the high school coaches where my boys attended knew who their dad was. They say, hey, can you have your dad come by? And I want to meet with them. And of course, they sound me on the fact, can you come by and help out? And so I started coaching my sons. And the one thing that I knew high school football changed a little bit. There was a lot more time dedicated to high school football compared to when I was coming up. You only play football during the football season. You go throw the shot put when it's track season, right? Little different things. So, and then, when I started doing that, I realized that you don't have a lot of time when a kid comes to you and got no fundamentals. They don't, you got to correct their 3-point stance and things like that. And I'm thinking, man, we don't have 10 to 15 minutes of individual period during practice is not enough. And if a parent pays $800 for their son to come and play and he hasn't done anything, you ain't playing, because we don't have as much time to teach them. So during the off season, I started coaching my own sons to make sure they're better when they, we focus on fundamentals. And then they started inviting their friends. And those kids started thriving, right? And then the next thing you know, some of those high school coaches like, Jess, why don't you just do an off-season lineman thing where you dedicated, an hour and a half to 2 hours of just basic offensive and defensive lineman fundamentals. So that way, these kids can become better players. So that's what I started doing. And the thing about it, coach, if people think, Jesse's teaching 15 different techniques. No, we're teaching fundamentals because all the other high schools, they have different systems. But I truly believe that if you are fundamentally sound, and I send a kid to you, you can coach them a lot faster because you don't have to go from the ground level and start building, the 3-point stance and all of that. So I started scheduling 12 Saturdays, because I think, like today, there's one day camps or a weekend camp. That's not enough time for me to coach an offensive lineman that don't know anything. They'll forget it. I can teach them 11 different things. They'll forget it on their way home. But I believe if you dedicate 12 Saturdays during the off season of 2 hours a Saturday, muscle memory plays a big part in how you become a better player. Like if we run inside zone right or outside zone right, you have to know the difference. But when you do it over and over and over, you don't think about it as much anymore because your body reacts to what you see over and over. So that's what Men in the Trenches. I started doing that 15 years ago, and it started growing. I have a super lineman tournament where, I started, I just sit back, I get bored, I start creating things like lineman challenges were consisting of, pushing the sled, obstacle course, tire flips, a tug of war, different things. And that's a great thing for lineman teams to go and compete at. And I'm thinking, when I was taking my sons to all these camps, satellite camps, I said, nobody really pays attention to the lineman until there's this one drill. That's one-on-one pass rush. And I'm thinking, if I can put a point system to it, I can have teams. Now the big boys can be involved in it like they do 7-on-7s. I mean, because when they do 7-on-7s, the big boys stay at home. And I didn't know if it was going to work. Like if a pass rusher has a clean win, I give him 2 points, and then you put things in like, if you're a player and a coach, what's not a complete domination and what's not. So you put 1 point here, or, the easiest thing is the clean win, right? Mm-hmm. And then I created that point system and I tried it the first year and it just took off, right? So now other people have come and learned it, and I'm fine with that. We've had super linemen that draws almost 500 linemen here. We got teams that come from Hawaii, Washington, Utah, but it gets a little scary sometimes, Coach, because I rather have quality than quantity. I'm not, but it grew so much because all the high school teams wanted to register and get their teams in. So that's when we started Super Lineman, which is a 5-on-5 competition, through a point system. But we also have a point system that we use for individuals when we do the Polynesian Football Hall of Fame Combine in Vegas, because we have that. I have a Polynesian Bowl game that's now on NFL Network. And I thank you, and I thank Roger Goodell and the NFL for believing in us in the way to share our culture. And the Polynesian Bowl, Coach, is 51%. You have to have Polynesian ancestry. We think our community is big enough now that we can have 3, 4, and 5 stars, that we can fill that 51%. But we save the other 49 to go out and get non-Polynesian players that will probably be in the NFL 3 or 4 years from then. Because then we can share our culture with them, the warrior mentality, the respect and humility that Polynesians bring to the table. Because I think the kids need that, especially when you go from not making any money to all of a sudden you become an instant millionaire. And I know that from my work with the Niners, that it helps the kids to learn our culture, to keep their feet on the ground, because as you know, just because you're talented enough to become an all-pro player doesn't mean you're good with your money. And I've seen so many guys, when I was playing, Coach, you can play 4 or 5 years and be bankrupt quick, because we make great money, but not the kind of money that these kids make, but now, kids can play 5, 6 years and you can be set for life. Your grandkids can be set for life. Your kids can be set for life if you do the right things. And that's part of our Polynesian brand. And then, of course, the Polynesian Football Hall of Fame. When I played in the NFL, coach, there were 4 of us. Then he went up to 6. Then went up to 7. Then he went back down to 5. Now we're over 100.
Wow.
We're over 100. And June Jones was telling me in some of those goodwill missions that we went to Samoa to do the camps. He said, Jess, do you guys know who the first Polynesian was to ever play in the NFL? I'm like, no. And when we researched into it, coach, it was 1947. A guy named L. Lolotai. The very first 49er team was 1946. So that's how far back our history goes. And June goes, you guys are growing so fast. It'll be a shame if you guys forget those that, blaze the trail for even guys like yourself. And then he looked at me and I'm like, what are you looking at me? And he says, you're kind of the leader of the pack.
You are.
There's guys that respect you that are now young. The present guys respect you. The older guys respect you because you've taken your career and pushed the envelope to the next level. And he says, we'll help you, Jess. And so we hire a marketing company, Coaching Charities, that does a lot of different charities for different coaches out of Vegas. And we started a dinner about 9 years ago for our first class. And, they said, Jess, we're going to charge $250 a ticket. I'm like, $250? I said, you're talking to Polynesians, right? Mm-hmm. So we did the first year. He says, they said, this is the marketing part of things. That Jess, if you treat it first class, and we promise you we're going to put on a first class event, the people will be happy to pay. So the first year we had 350 people at the dinner. I'm like, wow, So I was really happy with the first year. The second year we went up to 800 people, like more than double. Now we average like 11 to 1,200 people at the dinner. And now not everybody pays individual tickets. Like we got sponsors that pay a lot of money, And then by our 4th, 5th year, we met and they wanted to have an all-star game, right? Because the dinner is to honor the former guys, and then we invite the present guys that are playing in the NFL now to come in and buy their tables. But we also wanted to reach out to the future, which are high schoolers, and we wanted to build an all-star game. So the first year we did it, we had to raise the money to bring about 110 kids to Hawaii. Coach, it's funny because when I look at it, I'm like, man, I played in the Pro Bowl in Hawaii, man. There's not much difference except that we get a check if we win when I was playing in the Pro Bowl. So we bring in 110 players, and the first couple of years was only on local TV in Hawaii, but we streamed a lot of things. But thank God with social media, some of these kids that are very, very popular players come back and started tweeting about their experience, how much fun they had. So the numbers showed, how many hits these kids have on their social media. We took it to CBS Network, and they took us on for 3 years. And then we became a national TV game with CBS Network. And then we went to the NFL. And just like you said, Coach, on a per capita basis, Polynesians are like 38 times more than any other group to become NFL players. So we present those facts. And Roger Goodell in the NFL took us on. And last year was the first time we were on NFL Network. We're very proud of that fact, and we try to, put on a great event. But at the same time, one of the greatest things, Coach, when some of our Black players, we had about 30 guys that played in our game that got drafted this past year, including the pick by, I think the highest guy is the running back that went to Atlanta, John Robinson.
He's a bad man.
Yeah, so he played in our game, but the great thing about it is not only do we share our culture. One of the things that we do, we take them on a tour of the Arizona Memorial at Pearl Harbor, right? And there's a guy that narrates that particular trip, and the Black kids, the young ones now, had no idea that a lot of Black soldiers lost their lives.
Oh yeah,
in the bombing of Pearl Harbor. So they walk off the boat. Of course, the way that they narrated it was really impactful. And they had tears coming down their eyes as they were riding the boat back. And I realized then that, I'm very proud of the product that we put on, because it becomes much more than a game. And then we teach them that haka dance that's, made famous now, with the All Blacks in New Zealand. And now
Yes, sir.
football has picked it up. A lot of the high school in the islands do it. And they learn that, and they have fun learning that stuff, because he has that warrior, you got to put yourself in a warrior trance mentality to
Fork mode, yeah.
yeah. So that's what the Polynesian Bowl is, and our Polynesian Hall of Fame. It's a great week of celebration. Some of our current NFL guys, if they don't make it to the playoffs, they're there at the dinner, and even if they're not there, they buy tables, because they want their family to come to the dinner. So it's grown a lot, and obviously it's a blessing from God that allows us to do what we do, and that's the Polynesian product that we have, brand that we have.
Yes, sir. So for the high school coaches that are watching, or the players out there, Polynesian or not, what advice would you give to the coaches and the players that are out there watching, maybe high school guys?
Well, I'm an old school guy. I still try to hang on to the roots and foundation of how you build a football player. Nowadays they got guys that just post, things, and I've never heard the word beast used so many times for a 16 or 17-year-old. I thought for you to become a beast, you got to earn it, right? Now it's like it's a race. It's like a nuclear race to see, and it's just, I understand it's the days that we live in. Kids are trying to advertise themselves to get recruited. But the bad thing about it is the parents are getting involved in that social media stuff too, And I'm an old school guy that's rooted in, hey, you need to make sure that your son is into hard work, take it one day at a time, put in the work, earned everything that, if you're going to be praised, you better earn it. You better bring it, and my advice to the parents and the high school coaches and the players is still believe in that foundation that hard work pays off. Hard work pays off, because if you're trying to make it through how you advertise yourself on social media, eventually it'll show up. This game does not lie to you. It'll eventually expose you at some point. Some of these kids, coaches, one of the things that I'm really careful about is some of these coaches. These players go to some of these coaches that do private training, and they start teaching them tricks of the trade, which is great, right? But I still believe if you don't have a foundation, you got to learn your fundamentals. If you don't have your fundamentals first, then start learning those tricks. As you go higher, and some of those players, like there's a certain technique that offensive linemen now use, and I know they learn it from somewhere, that they like to, lose ground and pull the defensive lineman out.
Trap or snatch, whatever they
Right,
call it.
because they lose their balance. That's great if you're doing it against a kid that is in high school. But what happens if a college kid at Ohio State doesn't lose his balance? What is your go-to thing after that? Because now you're stuck, right? Like I use tricks, but I don't use it unless I need to use it according to what I study.
It's a counter move. It's not the first
counter.
thing.
It's not the base of your feet.
It's not the first thing you learn. It's not a white belt. You start with a white belt. That's like a black belt.
And that's one of the things that I know right off the bat when a kid comes to Men in the Trenches, my camp, that he's learned it from somewhere else, And it's so hard to break those kids, to make them see, hey, move your feet, have your posture correct. That's the fundamentals of pass protection. I know it's fun when you find success that you pull someone down. I said, what happens if you can't pull that person down? What's your go-to move now to save yourself? Because now you're stuck, because that's the only thing you know. And I tell them, I said, if you happen to have an umpire that's flag happy and starts calling that stuff, what are you going to do now? So those are some of the challenges.
When they don't throw a flag on my team, I'm surprised. We get more flags, more holding penalties, coach. We run the ball to our sideline every play. We can't run the ball to the other team's sideline because they yell holding every play. Yeah.
And I, what we do at my lineman academy, coach, I don't even waste, teaching them stuff that I that I learned with the 49ers until they're ready to, and then sometimes when there's a kid that I feel like he's ready to learn that stuff, then I have the parents bring them to me individually, outside of what we do at Men in the Trenches, because then I feel good about making sure that now we start teaching them, some of the stuff that, like I share. There's a kid that was first team All-American from SC to center, consensus first team. He came from Japan, and I coached him since he was 8th grader. The great thing about that is I kind of went step to step with him, so he was so fundamentally sound. But then he got to the point where I started teaching him, like on first down, when you're studying someone that's like an Aaron Donald, right? 1st and 10, you got to try to live in Aaron's mind. It's the only way you can beat that guy. What does he think on 1st and 10? Well, Aaron probably won't make a real big move on 1st and 10 because the mentality of the fundamentals of D-line, 1st and 10, you got to play run first, right? And then if you see that they're throwing the ball on 1st down, then you make your move, right? 2nd and 5, what's the mentality of the defensive line? I still have to respect run because they gained 5 yards on 1st down. They could run the ball, right? I can't just pass rush and go wide because what if they run the ball on 2nd and 5, right? 2nd and 4, right? They're going to have to play run first, right? So my point is when you play it with down and distance, if it's 2nd and 5 and you watch the film and Aaron Donald pauses for half a second to try to make sure that he's secure to run, that half a second you get into him takes away the danger zone. And Bob Kitchik would tell me, on 3rd and 7, now, Jesse, that's the reason why we pay you. Now you got to block. 3rd and 15, Bob used to say, 3rd and 15, your grandmother sitting in the stands know what we're going to do with the ball. We're throwing the ball on 3rd and 15. So, but what happens is, coach, is when you put it in that content, that concept, now you cut the danger zone up in half. Now Aaron Donald is half as dangerous as what he used to be. If it's 1st and 10 and you show pass right away, you're playing into his hands. He's coming off that ball because he sees you pass set, right? But it's all depending on down and distance. And that's something that I learned from Bob McKittrick that carried me through because, I'm 6'3". I played against guys like Leon Lett, that's 6'8", that they call him the big cat. It doesn't make sense. Right. How am I supposed to block him if he's athletic, he's quick, and 6'8"? If I'm not fundamentally sound with my posture, no chance. No chance. Played against guys like Keith Millard, John Randall, some of those guys. Now, John Randall was a great matchup for me because he was only 6'2".
Yeah.
But those are the fundamentals, coach, that when I teach kids, I teach while it's in the back of my mind why I'm teaching it. I don't teach that pull down stuff right away. That's just a change up or something that you see when you study the film that particular player likes to be top heavy, and then you can club them down and that kind of thing. But to me, if your fundamentals are sound, then it's like building your house, on a rock compared to building your house on the sand by skipping the fundamentals and try to go to the tricks of the trade. But with social media, every parent, they want their sons to learn the tricks of the trade and not patient with building the foundation of their sons as players. So those are some of the things that I'm experiencing right now that, and I'm sure the coaches that dedicate their time to coach someone else's son in high school have to put up with that stuff too.
Yes, sir. Well, I appreciate you coming on, Jesse. I can't wait to do the show on Coach McKittrick. It's been good.
Yeah, let's do that.
You. But God bless you. Thank you for everything.
Thank you, Coach. Appreciate it, man. Thanks for having me on.
We can chat for a little bit, okay?
Okay.
Thank you.